Hello, everybody. Round 4. Finally got it.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. Elon Musk has been named in the millions of Epstein documents, videos, and photos that were released by the DOJ today, and it makes certainly for a scandalous headline. So what did Elon Musk do with Jeffrey Epstein? We're going to break it down here. Look at this. Elon Musk asked Jeffrey Epstein about pedophiles' wild island parties and when to attend them. For Elon, who's a man who has never shied away from talking about Jeffrey Epstein, either as an aside, a joke, a tweet, even tweeted that Donald Trump wasn't releasing the Epstein files because he was in them. That was, of course, rock bottom with the Elon Musk-Donald Trump relationship. That tweet went thermonuclear. Elon since deleted it and seemingly apologized to Trump. They're back on good terms.
I had to put my
Elon Musk asking about Bill Gates in the Epstein files. This was at the height of Doge when Bill Gates was attacking Elon Musk. Listen to this.
Comments that Bill Gates made the other day, which and I know that you called him. I know you've said that already. I wondered, and I'm just.
Who does Bill Gates think he is to make comments about the welfare of children, given that he frequented Jeffrey Epstein?
Okay, well, he said he regrets those, and he spent a lot of his own money on philanthropy around the world over the years. My question to you is: have you looked?
All right, that's a roast and a good one from Elon Musk, and an accurate one, by the way, because the documents do prove that Bill Gates is the world's biggest scumbag, and that's really not anything that you can debate now. Listen, Bill Gates having affairs with other women is why his relationship and marriage was destroyed. His wife will tell you that. Yeah, she straight up went on late night TV and said, I can't be intimate with this guy because I don't trust him. Right? And then said that he loved Jeffrey Epstein. They were such good friends. Well, listen, here's why they were friends. Jeffrey Epstein says Bill Gates caught a sexually transmitted disease from the young Russian girls that he procured for him, then suggested he was secretly slipping Melinda antibiotics. Oh, no. Along with other pretty despicable claims that seem to, at the very least, align with what we publicly know about Bill Gates with young Russian bridge players and so on. So all I'm trying to say here is that what Elon Musk was saying in this exchange certainly makes a lot of sense about Bill Gates and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But what about Elon Musk's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Let's go ahead and read here. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, emailed pedophile Jeffrey Epstein about what day would be suitable to visit the financier's famous island for a wild party. What day night would be the wildest party on your island? Musk emailed Epstein in 2012. The Tesla CEO's inquiry was in a response to an email that Epstein sent Musk asking how many people would we be able to helicopter to your island. Musk's cozy relationship with the deceased pedophile was unveiled on Friday. It hadn't previously been known, writes the Daily Mail here. Is that true exactly? Well, let's go ahead and look at the emails here, right? And the reporting. Elon Musk appears in latest trove of Epstein files. He previously denied any involvement. Here we go. More exchanges between Elon Musk and Epstein in a new batch, says this Politico senior legal reporter. I'll send a helicopter for you, says Jeffrey Epstein. Will be in St. Bart's over the holidays. When is a good time to visit? You can see here that that Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein were writing back and forth. And people are reporting on this. I'll send a helicopter for you. Musk has stated that the exchange would be in the British Virgin Islands over the holidays. British Virgin Islands are about 15 miles away from Jeffrey Epstein's Predator Island. So people are obviously going out and reporting this. Elon Musk is getting dunked on over this, right? This is the famous deleted tweet trying to drop the big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And that's the reason they haven't been made public. Have a nice day. You can see that this was seen by millions of people.
Welcome to the next generation of website creation, Wix Harmony. Get the power of AI and the freedom of drag and drop to turn your words into a website.
Halfway.
Trump to Elon, Uno reverse. Yes. So what is the truth exactly? Do you remember Elon Musk? When you get a good scandal, call it Elon Gate. That's right. This is what Elon Musk says. People calling it clickbait, and we'll go over why I see a lawsuit coming for the Daily Mail over this. If there's ever a scandal about me, please call it Elon Gate. It's from Elon Musk. All right. So what is the scandal here exactly? Well, if you go through the full email exchange, what you'll find, not just the snippets that are posted, what you'll find is that Elon Musk seems to be going back and forth in good humor with Jeffrey Epstein about a potential time to visit their island, the island. That is, a matter of fact here. But every single time Elon Musk demurs and says, I can't do it, I'm too busy, I can't do it, I'm too busy. There is no physical evidence, zero physical evidence that two ever met, two ever had anything in common, ever did any business, that Elon Musk was ever on the island at all. Zero physical evidence. Of course, there's lots of physical evidence that Bill Clinton and hundreds of other people were on that island or on the planes. There's photos of Bill Clinton with young girls in his lap on the plane. So what do the reporters say about this? More exchanges with Musk and Epstein. Here's my takeaway. This is from the stodgy Politico legal reporter who would love to destroy Musk's career. The Epstein-Elon exchanges, actually that Epstein repeatedly tried to get Elon to visit him, offered him helicopters and planes and everything to get Elon to his island. Elon kept blowing him off, saying that he was too busy. And there's nothing in what I've seen so far that says that they actually ever physically met. There were a lot of unrequited asks by Epstein. So Epstein was running his op. He already had the blackmail on the richest man on earth, right? He already had blackmail on Bill Gates here. So time to move your way down the chain to Elon Musk. He was running the op. He was running the intel op. But here is, again, Politico senior reporter saying this isn't true. Now, here's more evidence that this actually isn't even a new allegation. Look at this. In this older article, you can see that Elon Musk is named as somebody who Jeffrey Epstein requested to go to the island. But again, here is Forbes saying, this meeting never happened. There were requests that Elon Musk could go to the island, but it didn't happen. Elon Musk has also commented on this. Here we go. From 2025, September 27th, 2025. Shame on Sky News for this utterly misleading headline. Anyone pushing this false narrative deserves complete contempt. Epstein tried to get me to go to his island. I refused. Yet they named me even before Prince Andrew, who did visit the island. So Elon Musk saying, I have nothing to hide. And even got a big fat community note here. Elon Musk, Prince Andrew, named in latest Epstein files release. So this isn't even in new news. So if you see it in your timeline, it's not new news. Here we go. Both names appear. Circumstances are vastly different. Elon name appear as a possible scheduling item only. No evidence they ever met. Prince Andrew appears in Epstein's flight logs and settled a civil case regarding sexual misconduct that cost tens of millions of dollars to the royal family. So there it is. Don't be duped by the fake news. That's all. And then it's Elon Musk who's straight up saying that the reason why so many of these billionaire donors support Kamala is because they don't want the files to be released.
January 6th, protesters in prison and not one person on the Epstein client list.
Will that ever come out, do you think?
I think part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
It kind of is.
And some of those billionaires
very bad day for Bill
Kamala
Gates
are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gates.
And Gates.
Yeah.
He was right. Elon was right. So until you show me physical evidence of Trump wrongdoing or Elon wrongdoing, then all of it is just salacious rumors and gossip column garbage. You're going to have to bring the physical evidence. And I don't see it. But it's good to see my boy cleared. Big Elon fan. It's your boy Benny.
Yeah. First video. Only Lucy and Carol's in chat. Oh, shoot. The next one is 15 minutes. 13 minutes. Remember this lady?
Something wrong now or not. It's about an algorithm thinking if you will do something wrong in the future.
This
I
lady,
think I would
okay?
definitely be on that algorithm. I think you would be as well.
I would argue that neoconservatives have very successfully rebranded, and I think Peter Thiel is a very important example of that. So Peter Thiel, as an example, Palantir has been in the news, right? He's a co-founder of that. So how was Palantir created? Well, there was this company that was being run, or not company, sorry. It was a government program after 9/11 called Total Information Awareness. It was housed within the Pentagon's DARPA office. And the man they chose to put in charge of that was John Poindexter, who was the highest ranking member of the Reagan administration to be indicted for his role in Iran-Contra, which again, the continuity of government stuff is relevant here. So eventually, it launches and whatever, but people are outraged by it because, as they rightly pointed out, it would eliminate constitutional protections of Americans' rights, specifically the right to privacy, among other things. It was a huge surveillance dragnet, and its goal wasn't just to, surveil everything. It was to predict crime before it happens, predict terror attacks before it happens. I mean, it's like Minority Report. Yeah. Was basically the end goal of it. And so after all the pushback, they changed the name to Terrorist Information Awareness and try and rebrand. Oh, it's not total. We are still going to surveil innocent Americans, but we're focusing on the terrorists. They did all this stuff to try and rebrand it, but Congress defunded it. But hidden in that bill, Congress allowed aspects of it to continue. And essentially, I argue in my work on Palantir that an effort was made to privatize large aspects of TIA as Palantir. Because when Alex Karp and Peter Thiel were setting it up, they went to John Poindexter through this guy named Richard Pearl, who is a long-standing neocon actor with very extensive ties also to the state of Israel. He was caught in the 70s giving classified information to Israel's embassy and should have gone to jail and somehow did not, and had a lot of ties also to Netanyahu's first government. And Richard Pearl is the guy that connected Thiel Karp to Poindexter, and they basically wanted to talk to Poindexter because they wanted to recreate Total Information Awareness and saw him as the godfather of modern mass surveillance. In doing so, they basically, Peter Thiel teams up with In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm. Alex Karp has said on record that the intended clients of Palantir from the beginning was the CIA. And the CIA was their first client for their first 6 years as a company. Their top developers went to Langley, Virginia, which is CIA headquarters, every 2 weeks to show the CIA their product and have them tweak it to their liking. And during that period of time, one of the top people at the CIA that would have been involved in that is this guy named Alan Wade, who was also intimately involved with Total Information Awareness. And if you look at how Total Information Awareness was described, its privacy protections, it's exactly the same as the way Palantir sold their stuff later on. There's an insane amount of overlap. And what's crazy here is that Alan Wade, a few years prior, had created a Homeland Security software program that was also pre-crime-esque and similar to what Palantir ended up doing. It was called Kiliad, and he teamed up with Christine Maxwell to do that.
I wonder what the Whitney Webb file in Palantir is like.
Sure, it's long.
It's got to know
They
that,
probably know I have a mold allergy and all sorts of stuff.
and that I'm visiting you, having a conversation.
Well, I mean, that's their job, right?
Well, it's funny. So
It's about pre-crime. It's about predicting stuff before it happens. And that's what I think a lot of people miss about Palantir, because a lot of people say about mass surveillance, well, I have nothing to hide, but it's not about if you're doing something wrong now or not. It's about an algorithm thinking if you will do something wrong in the future.
I think I would definitely be on that algorithm. I think you would be as well.
Well, the problem is that pre-crime has been inching along, and actually a lot of people in Epstein world, I mean, obviously Peter Thiel and Epstein had a relationship. More came out about this earlier this year after, Thiel kind of tried to minimize his ties a few months earlier. But Peter Thiel's Founders Fund co-invested in this company with Epstein and Wexner and Ehud Barak called Carbine.
Let's cover 10 pro tips for working with the Cursor agent. So I've got Cursor open and my agent on the right. And the first tip is to use...
That basically had a pre-crime component to it. And Carbine has now colonized an insane amount of 911 emergency call services systems like throughout the U.S. and are the main company at the forefront. If this legislation in the U.S. is passed, it's called Next Generation or NG 911, where they're going to basically federalize and centralize all 911 emergency call systems. And then when you centralize it, you can just put one company in charge. They've changed the board a lot since the Epstein scandal because Ehud Barak was the chair and there were people on the board that were tied to Epstein, including a woman that he allegedly took to the UK to sort of soften up some US senators whose identity is still unknown before the Iraq war vote. But it's a story for another time. And, some other figures tied to Epstein were on the board, and it would formerly been created by veterans of Israeli intelligence. But now they only have one of the Israeli intelligence co-founders on the board. The others have left to do other things. One of them now works for Eric Prince, I believe. And, they've kind of gone their separate ways, and they've tried to rebrand as a more American looking company, I guess. I think they added Trump's former head of DHS, Christy Nielsen, I think is her name, to the board. And they have Michael Chertoff, the former one of the early heads of DHS under Bush, is there.
So so everything and everyone is captured and everything is corrupt. Are they really good
I think that's kind of a simplification. I think not everything has always been like that. I think this particular group, once they got their hands on power, it's a faction, they've been consolidating control for a long time. And I think the advent of technology, big tech sort of taking over our lives, has really facilitated that. Because the whole conclusion to my book is that why would you take someone like Epstein down? You don't need people like him anymore to compromise people, because all of our lives are increasingly online. So if they want something on you, they can just harvest it off through, whether it's Palantir, it ends up in your Palantir database. Basically, it's sucked up by the NSA or GCHQ or any of these other agencies. And you're profiled based on it. Or if there isn't incriminating stuff, they can plant incriminating stuff on your devices.
So you're screwed either way.
If they want to screw you, I mean, sure. Yeah. And so it's much easier to consolidate power under those circumstances.
Do you think there are...
And they elevate people who are compromised to positions of power. How did a guy like Dennis Hastert become Speaker of the House of the United States when it was known that he was a pedophile years before getting to that position? Because they can hold it over his head the whole time.
Do you think there are a lot of Epsteins operated?
Well, yeah, my whole book is about how Epstein was not an anomaly. I mentioned the example of Adnan Khashoggi, but I mentioned Robert Keith Gray, who Robert Maxwell hired when he came, to the U.S. And made his big entry into New York City. He was also involved in blackmail stuff. There was a page boy scandal he was related to in the 1980s where, I forget the guy's name. I think Larry Craig was the name of the main congressman or senator involved. And Craig denied all the charges, but then got caught.
Baker Mayfield, what is going on? Your career is in jeopardy. Not every man knows.
In the early 2000s for soliciting, in a bathroom in an airport or something like that. But there's been a ton of these scandals over the years. And then you have figures like Roy Cohn, who I mentioned earlier, involved in blackmail activities as well. There's a lot of these figures.
Blackmail seems to become very useful.
Well, it is, because, this is one of those things that's a holdover from the mob that later gets absorbed by intelligence agencies because they see its utility,
So if we see someone rich, famous,
knowing knowing information, the sexual blackmail information, the CIA, that's intelligence to them. We want to gather intelligence on these people and then use it to our benefit for national security interests.
Which is all economic.
Well, more often
largely,
than not,
yeah.
but it's, it's obviously other things too. Just, I think it depends on the circumstance, really.
It's so hard to get your head around it, Whitney.
Well, I've thought about, I understand that my books are like a lot of information, but the thing is, we're never going to get an affidavit from the CIA being like, yes, we did bad things. Like, we've known they've done bad things in various decades. It's been very documented, and they won't admit to bad things there in almost every one of those cases. So it's like, you're not going to get that about Epstein or about anybody else,
So why do you think Epstein became almost like the central figure for all of this corrupt global elite meta cartel?
Well, he's just a microcosm of it, really. But I think
is it his own
he became too exposed, I think, especially after his first arrest.
Good.
And as he described it, he became radioactive. But he had, before been able to move through all these different circles, with impunity, and was a well-respected guy in these elite circles, right? He was useful to a lot of people, mainly for money things, but also for, other more illegal things from what we know about the case as it's developed. So I think since then, I don't know, he tried to rebrand as like a tech entrepreneur and all this stuff, but he was allegedly still cultivating important relationships. He was reportedly advising Tesla on how to take Tesla private. He claimed to be advising Treasury on the Department of Treasury on cryptocurrency and anti-hacking efforts. All sorts of, he was still doing a lot of stuff between those arrests. It's just, the public association was, no longer beneficial for a lot of powerful people.
But he was considered financially illiterate.
By who?
Well, I think Eric Weinstein came out and said he's a moron.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Doesn't he work for Teal Capital?
Well,
Eric, I'm not super familiar with Eric Weinstein's Epstein story, but as I understand it, he talks a lot more about his impressions of Epstein at the meeting as opposed to why he was going there. And I believe he ran a hedge fund at the time. So
now.
Come around with your hands in your pockets and
I had to get my new number.
baby, I've been thinking too much.
So why would you be going to Epstein as a hedge fund guy? I don't know.
Well, it seems like everybody met with Epstein at one time.
Yeah, for financial stuff. But I do not believe that he was financially illiterate. He was very successful. He would not have been tapped in the 80s by people like Adnan Khashoggi and Douglas Leese if he was not savvy. He helped orchestrate one of the largest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history, Towers Financial, but his name got dropped from the case like 3 months in. So, I mean, how do you do that? By being financially illiterate. Why would Leslie Wexner give you power of attorney over all of his affairs?
Well, that is also very weird, though.
But would he do that for someone who's financially illiterate? Because Epstein had several years between 1987 or 1985, depending on who you believe, when the introduction was made.
But why give it to him anyway?
Well, obviously, Wexner liked Epstein very much. I think there's no questions there. So there's this murder of Wexner's tax attorney.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, Epstein comes into Wexner's world and untangles his tangled finances, whatever that means. And Epstein during that time, before then, between 1981 and 1985, described himself as a financial bounty hunter. He was hired to find money that had been stolen, and he hid away stolen money for powerful people. He played both sides. And someone who can effectively do that, he was hired by like very fancy, like aristocratic people for those purposes, admittedly. Like a very aristocratic Spanish family being one of them. They would not just hire some financially illiterate idiot to do that kind of stuff for them. And Adnan Khashoggi was one of his clients too. He's not going to hire a financially illiterate guy to do that. I think that is, it's bull, and it's part of this narrative that's been woven about Epstein, about how he was just charismatic and him being good at anything else was just a facade.
So it's a distraction.
Well, yeah, because by that narrative inherently means don't look any deeper into what Epstein was doing, in his early history, for example.
Yeah, she does a lot of good intel. She's good. About 4 minutes, I think, on this one.
Big time change agents, RFK Jr., Tulsi, and Kash Patel were before the Senate, presenting common sense and sanity. We're in a full mobilization over this weekend to ensure that all of them get confirmed. Right now, it looks like Kash has the votes, while Tulsi and Bobby are question marks. Call your senator, 202-224-3121. Tell them we voted for this. Confirm them. Now, Trump's new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, outlined a new foreign and economic policy centered on this hemisphere, prioritizing the Americas in the Wall Street Journal Thursday. To the screams of the globalists, Trump is imposing tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico for their participation in the fentanyl industry, which is killing thousands of Americans every month. He says he will soon impose tariffs on the EU as part of an overall strategy to reshore and build American industry and manufacturing while eviscerating our huge trade imbalances. The Ukraine war is closer to settlement than at any time after the spring of 2022, when the British and Anthony Blinken blew up an agreed peace plan despite the continuing carnage to achieve advantages in a final settlement. That is a very unstable situation, but is proceeding toward peace, which is what Trump promised. There are major diplomatic moves to settle the other ongoing war in the Middle East, although both wars are historically driven messes. Settling them would challenge Solomon himself. Rick Grenell returned from Venezuela, having successfully secured 6 Americans who had been held hostage there. We'll touch on all of this morning, but I want to emphasize the best way to get your hands around all of this, which is moving so fast that Trump's followers and those who are seeking to document all of this keep asking him to take a small break. You can become a paid member of Promethean Action and join the dialogue in our community because we're dedicated to exploring the implications of all of this. Now, you have probably not heard really most of what I just outlined. That's because the mainstream media is in a hysterical fit based on Trump's firings of those who engaged in unconstitutional lawfare against him and his political movement at the DOJ and FBI. He has killed the security clearances of the retired intelligence mafia, who said that the expose of Hunter Biden's laptop by the oldest newspaper in this country, the New York Post, bore the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. A big, huge lie, which impacted the 2020 election hugely. Yesterday, he barred these criminals from entering federal buildings. He has temporarily killed foreign aid, including the notorious USAID at the State Department, which is the front group for CIA regime change operations. Otherwise, he is downsizing and repurposing the bloated federal government to one dedicated to rebuilding the United States, embracing our sovereignty, rejecting the New World Order imposed by the modern British Empire in its most recent form after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989. It is a daunting task. Good morning. Again, what a week it was.
Okay, that was that lady from that group, the other lady there on TikTok. I'm not sure. I don't know if I played this one or not. I won't be able to play that. I'm going to do, this one's kind of new. I want to do this short clip.
Loved the last post on this so much, I thought I would share a little bit more about what Blue Lives Matter has been doing, and you're going to love this. Operation Fake Out continues, with people learning the hard way that doxing ICE agents and law enforcement will backfire. This woman from Groveland, Massachusetts, and another one of West Newbury, Massachusetts, decided to try and dox the ICE director and his wife and kids. These two ladies were exposed, and something kind of fun happened. Someone totally not us, reported to the Report ICE activity hotline that the ICE officer was forced to take the life of the woman in Minnesota was being hidden with his family at a home in Groveland, Massachusetts. Someone also, totally not us, reported to the Report ICE activity hotline that the officer who took out the armed nurse in Minnesota was being hidden with his family at a home in West Newbury, Massachusetts. We hear there might have been some confusion and that the addresses leaked into the Report ICE activity hotline might have mistakenly been the addresses of the individuals who believe it's okay to dox ICE agents. Sources on the ground tell us that in the middle of the night, far-left protesters and agitators arrived at said homes in large numbers, blowing whistles, banging pans, laying on horns, and demanding they leave Massachusetts. Someone has turned the parasites on themselves, and we're watching in enjoyment. But it totally wasn't us. We would never be behind such a silly thing as that, or reporting thousands upon thousands of fake locations of where ICE agents have been spotted, including biker bars and liberal coffee shops. Okay, friends, carry on with your day.
Hey, lady from Minnesota. Now, let's play, I think we got, did we do the clips with Cash and Rubio? Hang on. You guys remember this one?
Failures in government oversight that allowed scammers to plunder taxpayer money for years while politicians looked the other way. Now, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst is introducing groundbreaking legislation designed to prevent this kind of massive theft from ever happening again. The bill would create early warning systems to detect fraud before it spirals out of control and force federal agencies to claw back every dollar stolen from American taxpayers. Before we dive into the shocking details of how this fraud operated and who's being held accountable, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our investigations into government corruption and waste. This is not just another story about government inefficiency or bureaucratic mistakes. This represents one of the largest welfare fraud schemes in American history, involving hundreds of arrests, fake child care centers with misspelled signs, and allegations that political leaders knew about the scam but chose to ignore it. The implications extend far beyond Minnesota to questions about how vulnerable our entire social safety net is to organized criminal exploitation. This is the inside story of the Quality Leering Center scandal and the legislative response it triggered. Senator Joni Ernst announced Thursday that she is introducing the Putting an End to Leering About Fraud Act, legislation specifically designed to address the catastrophic oversight failures exposed by the Minnesota scandal. The bill's name references the viral Quality Leering Center, a fake daycare operation that became the symbol of widespread fraud after its comically misspelled sign drew attention from investigators and citizen journalists. It's absolutely unacceptable that the fraud running rampant in Minnesota could end up costing taxpayers more than $9 billion, Ernst told Fox News Digital in an exclusive statement. My Putting an End to Leering About Fraud Act will ensure this never happens again by putting more safeguards in place to detect scams early and require the recovery of any money ripped off from taxpayers. The legislation attacks fraud on two fronts. First, it tightens rules around child care payments and creates new spike alerts in healthcare programs to flag suspicious surges early. Second, it pushes the federal government to aggressively recover improper payments, whether they resulted from deliberate fraud or administrative error, Ernst's bill would fundamentally change how federal child care dollars flow to providers. Currently, many programs pay based on enrollment rather than actual attendance. This system creates opportunities for fraud because providers can claim payment for children who never actually receive care or who don't even exist. Under the proposed legislation, state plans tied to federal child care dollars would be required to pay providers based on documented attendance, not just enrollment. This simple change would prevent taxpayer money from going out for care that never happened. The bill also clarifies that states can reimburse providers after services are delivered rather than paying up a stag.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, look at 8 o'clock.
He consistently advocated for aggressive stances against authoritarian regimes, supported robust military spending, and championed American leadership on the world stage. During his Senate tenure, Rubio became one of the most vocal critics of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. He called for Maduro's overthrow, supported opposition leaders, and pushed for harsh economic sanctions designed to strangle the regime's revenue sources. Rubio's focus on Venezuela was both ideological, rooted in his opposition to socialism and authoritarianism, and strategic, recognizing Venezuela's geopolitical importance and its destabilizing influence across Latin America. In 2019, well before his current position, Rubio predicted Maduro's eventual fall, even though he acknowledged uncertainty about the timeline. He's picked a battle he can't win. Rubio told the New York Times about Maduro, "It's just a matter of time. The only thing we don't know is how long it will take and whether it will be peaceful or bloody." That prediction proved remarkably accurate. On January 3rd, 2026, United States forces launched strikes in Venezuela and captured Nicolas Maduro in a dramatic operation that shocked the world. The mission represented the culmination of years of planning and pressure, with Rubio playing a central role in both the strategic planning and tactical execution. Following Maduro's capture, President Trump announced that the United States would run Venezuela until a peaceful transition could occur. This extraordinary declaration of American administration over a sovereign nation attracted immediate scrutiny and controversy. Democrats in Congress questioned the legality of the Venezuela operation, which was conducted without congressional approval. Critics argued that military action against another nation requires congressional authorization under the War Powers Act and Constitution. They accused the administration of executive overreach and potentially illegal military aggression. Rubio pushed back forcefully against these criticisms. He argued that congressional approval was not required because the operation was not an invasion in the traditional sense. According to Rubio's interpretation, the mission to capture Maduro and establish temporary American oversight represented a special operation rather than a war or invasion requiring congressional authorization. This legal reasoning remains contested. Constitutional scholars and members of Congress continue debating whether the administration's actions fell within executive authority or violated separation of powers. But regardless of the legal merits, the Venezuela operation demonstrated Rubio's willingness to take bold action and worry about political consequences later. The successful capture of Maduro significantly enhanced Rubio's reputation and influence. What had been theoretical advocacy for regime change became reality under his leadership. The operation showed that Rubio could translate hawkish rhetoric into effective action, a quality Trump values in America.
Okay, that's 2 parts there. Did anybody remember saying that Japan is the end game for Watch Japan? I just found something here.
That soup of quantitative easy, QE, QT, double QT with the nose on the top or whatever. All it is financial engineering that may postpone the inevitable, but it does not eliminate the inevitable. And so what did they do? In order to support their stock market, the whale gobbled up tons and tons of stock, like 90% of the Nikkei 225, which is what you're looking at here. I'd like you to look. Yep, they just broke out of that cup formation. Can you see that? And look at, even as their bond market is in massive distress, you see their stock market making new highs. But they are the top shareholder. And so once they started buying in a very pervasive way, it made things look okay, but that's just engineering. That's all that it is. And we're going to see what happens from it. But this melt up part, I particularly bring that up because I believe that we are in melt up. I've been talking about it for a while now. And that's the markets melting up. There's all sorts of bad news that's coming out right now, and especially in their debt markets, which is the biggest and most important markets in the world. Not necessarily Japan's debt markets, but just the debt markets as a whole. So there, the stock market is just screaming up. Makes it look good, but it's really a flight to safety. And again, going back to 2025, by 2025, the Bank of Japan now owns more than 52% of all Japanese government bonds. And that was what, back in April. So it's higher than that now. So what do? Why are they buying stocks and they're buying bonds? It's called perception management. If they can make you perceive something, then they can dictate how you move forward. Don't be fooled, because what's happening is the markets are losing confidence. This is the 10-year Japanese government bond, and look at where that interest rate is. It will spike above that more than likely, right? But you see that cup formation, it's going to go back to more new highs, just like it is here in the US, in Europe, in China, everywhere else. This is not just one little isolated incident. Oh, that's Japan. But does it completely annihilate the carry trade where you buy it with a much lower or even negative interest rates you borrow from Japan at negative rates, and then you go out and you put it into some other asset or instrument that will give you a higher yield? Well, with interest rates at this level, that trade is dead. But it doesn't mean, oh, it's gone. Boom. There are no consequences. Yes, there are consequences, because traders have to unwind their positions, which puts pressure on global stock markets as well as global bond markets. Japan has been setting the rules.
So, yeah, someone was saying about Japan, I hope that was an important video to get out. Okay, this one, I can't remember if we played it or not. You guys remember this one?
Than thous, we got all those people who are trying to stay relevant, trying to tote the news, but they're not looking at actual legislation. So there's a difference in propaganda and also how the military functions and operates and how your country functions and operates. I have never come on here to try to persuade you to vote for Donald John Trump.
Tonight.
It's not about voting in the first place. I'm not talking about voting. I'm talking about legislation that's already been written and already been passed. So all these experts, quote unquote, they're misleading you with opinions. You don't need opinions when you have legislation. You don't need predictions when you have legislation. what the average everyday American like myself and yourself needs daily is what's happening daily. You don't need to look at tomorrow. What's the Bible tell you about looking at tomorrow? We have enough problems today. We don't need to look into tomorrow. Worry about today. Worry about what you can, but you don't need to worry either. The Bible tells you that worrying is also a sin. All right. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to fear. It don't say anything to fear. It says to fear God himself. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. If death is absolute and death is final, then that means I don't have to fear anything from living to death. Nothing. So if you want to be a patriot, act like a patriot. You want to be a Christian, act like a Christian. That's how that works. And so you got all these quote unquote experts, these red check, blue checks, they're trying to hang on to relevancy when they probably never even had relevancy to begin with, right? Because so many people are used to every 4 and every 8 years, someone coming in and blowing smoke up your dress. What did Donald John Trump say that the reason people was going to vote for him in 2016 to Jeb Bush? He said what? He told Jeb Bush, every one of you been on this stage have held office no less than 4 years, and you tell the American people what they want to hear, but you never back it up. All that stuff. So like my friends text me today because this little imbeciles, little hate group that I have out there who have tried to steal my logo, they have premeditated and prefabricated all kinds of lies and false information about me. I can prove it in the court of law. I'm like Matt Gaetz. Let's go. Hey, let's do it. All my text messages, we can go back as far as AT&T will go. Let's go. Come on with it. Let's do this. All right. So these people went to my friends and they try to start these lies and hate. It's because they go to people that they can get to. And I told them, hey, don't worry. I'm used to these trolls. They're idiots. They're morons. And it's actually sad. They're ostracizing themselves. And it's this whole operation was not for a party operation. This was not for Republicans. This wasn't a conservative thing. This is a world operation. Legislation shows that. So instead of showing you, the people, where I'm wrong with laws and orders, they can't do that because it ain't nothing wrong. Donald Trump put this into place. He's he's the face of this whole operation, but it's a world operation with world leaders and it's world generals. All right. He's the face. He's the helm of it. You can't prove it wrong because he put it into place and it's not that old. So then you hear these podcasters out there talking about, I've been saying what Derek Johnson's been saying for 10 years now. It ain't 10 years old. A lot of these.
Okay, I think that was a new one. I think this next one, I'm not sure if we played either, you guys. Let me know if we played it or not.
It looks like the new boss there, Barry Weiss, is having a really hard time. And I mean, really hard. You know, anyone could have predicted this coming, me especially, because I once used to work there and am pretty familiar with the culture and how they're very staid and they're very set in their ways. And all of a sudden, this woman comes along and she's just been paid, what, $150 million for her free press site. And they're like, who do you think you are, you print lady, you opinion print lady? You think you're going to remake the newsroom? And she's like, hell yeah, I am, because that's what I was hired to do. I was hired by, you see, David Ellison, son of Larry Ellison, to try and get you guys into ship shape. But you're talking about CBS News. That's where I hate to break it to you, Barry. Like, you should have talked to me ahead of time. Of course, I would have still told you to take the $150 million, right? But I would have also advised you that this would be one thankless job where you would get to, well, just nowhere, really, really fast. I think you're actually going to have to fire the entire newsroom if you're actually going to see anything fruitful out of this. You'll probably have to get rid of the unions too. I mean, I don't really know how you bust up the joint given the sort of entrenched culture that has been there for decades now. I mean, decades. You guys have heard my story, right? About how, you know, they still had rotary phones. I think Sharon, actually, who I'm going to talk about in just a second, Sharon Alfonso, who's there at 60 Minutes, she and I were Northeast Bureau correspondents together. She's actually a hysterical person, a really great woman. I don't even know if she's that liberal, frankly. I mean, she's from Texas now, originally from I think Mississippi. Yeah, Mississippi. And her husband was a Navy SEAL. So I don't know if she's extremely left, but everyone else in the building is. And apparently, for some reason, Barry Weiss decided to pick a fight with Sharon. Not a good person to pick a fight with, only because the whole building loves her. Okay, they love her. And Barry, they don't like you. And so I think you're all going up in smoke. Okay, so you get rid of Sharon, great. Sharon will find a job somewhere else, I'm sure. I think actually it would be great for Sharon to have another job somewhere else for sure, because, who the hell would want to work at 60 Minutes? Seriously, these days. I don't even know who's watching. Anyway, so you can see the headline in the Daily Mail. CBS News veterans facing axe after speaking out against Barry Weiss, because apparently you don't speak to the boss like that. Well, they're having some hard times because they don't see her as the boss, right? They see her as a little chickadee that just came in and tried to tell them what to do. And they're like, no, we own this. I'll give you a good example. So the building that CBS News is in, across the street, they had a somewhat better building. It was called the BMW building because I think they sold BMWs downstairs. Anyway, that was where the 60 Minutes offices were. And like when I was there, so this would have been like 2005, 2006 when I was there, they were still smoking in the offices. Oh yeah. They were smoking up a chimney in there because they're like, how dare you tell us that we can't smoke in our offices? Or Andy Rooney. Andy Rooney used to have an office right down the hall from me at CBS News, and he'd have cocktail parties. He'd bring all his friends over, and they'd sit there and watch the evening news, and he'd be like pouring the gin, which, you got to kind of admire. That's the way to live, right? CBS News is like a relic, right? It's a dinosaur. It's from a whole other era, and there's something somewhat endearing about it. The problem is when you're in a new environment with a whole new medium, a whole new news medium, and people are used to accessing content in a very different way, in a very quick way, right? Not in a very slow and steady way, then it just doesn't fly. On top of which you layer in all the bias that's so inherent there in the entire building, and you got a recipe for a total disaster. Plus, what, a 20 some odd $1 million settlement that you had to fork over for one Donald Trump because you guys tried to influence the election. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to say it, but when you cut up Kamala Harris like that and you slice and dice her when she's saying something that is completely incoherent and you actually make her sound sense, it makes some sense. I mean, hey, I got to tell you, one, whoever did that one deserves like an Emmy Award because that's what you call editing. And two, you can't do that. Okay. And we live in a different era now where things are far more natural, right? Au natural. And so the canned, scripted, slow 60 Minutes evening news is done and over. And you know what? If Sharon gets fired, more power to her, because I'm sure there's better things that she could be doing. Scott Pelley, I mean, I don't know. I think poor Scott doesn't have much of a future doing really anything. Do I have a picture of him? I may. Oh yeah, he's the guy on the bottom. He's on his way out anyway. Let's face it. He's all mad because they got rid of his executive producer, who was the guy who was running 60 Minutes, Bill Owens, because Bill was upset because Sherry Redstone wanted to sell that puppy, right? Remember, so she settled the CBS suit with Donald Trump, and the guy who's the executive producer was like busting apart, like, smoke coming out of his ears. And he resigned in a huff. And it was this big thing in the New York Times. Nobody really cared. Anyway, now Scott Pelley, who was his sort of talent that he produced, he got on the air and was like puffing and puffing to blow the house down. But that didn't really go anywhere because guess what? He's got a new boss. And the new boss says, I don't like you very much. And David Ellison, who now owns the company, says, I don't like you very much. And guess what? We own 60 Minutes and we pay your salary. So if you don't like it, please leave. Apparently, this guy has a contract. They're talking about buying him out. They want him out of the building so fast. But here's my thought on it. It's not going to do you any good because you got Scott Pelley and you got 20 more little Scott Pelleys where that came from. So I don't think you got any luck changing anything over there. How are you going to do it? Think about this. When I worked there, always went out with a big camera crew, a cameraman. It was lovely, somebody to do the lights, somebody to do the audio, et cetera, et cetera. But I also had a smart producer who knew that he could take a very small little camera somewhere and go and shoot everything himself. But you see, the union didn't allow it. So I wound up doing a ton of stories down in Latin America. You wonder how I know so much about Venezuela, right? I mean, in addition to having traded their sovereign debt back in the day at Goldman Sachs, I was like, hey, let's go to Venezuela. We'll do a story down there because we could do it without bringing all the heavy camera equipment, but only out of the country because all the union rules were so strict. So they are weighed down by unions. They are weighed down by culture, and they are weighed down by their ideology that's a super left. So where are you gonna go? Apparently, Sharon Alfonsi and Barry Weiss got into it. If you read in the New York Post, Alfonsi apparently blew up at Barry Weiss and said, hey, you don't get to produce me. This is my story. You got that? You don't get to produce me. I mean, in fairness to Barry, all Barry was asking for is to make sure she had someone on record from the White House saying X, Y, and Z, right? Because they were going out accusing them of this, that, and the other with the CCOT video that they had. By the way, everybody had that video. My own producer, David, was down there months ago before 60 Minutes. Everybody had that video. So it was not like it was anything new. And Barry was like, okay, if we're going to do this story, we're going to advance this story. And one way to advance it would be to see if we can make any news from the administration. Well, apparently the administration didn't want to have anything to do with it. And so Sharon accused her of saying, hey, now the White House is going to dictate whether or not we get a story on the air. Here's my advice. What I would have done in that case, find the other side. Okay. I don't care if you're going to play a Fox News clip. Would it kill you? Would it kill you? Or a podcast clip, whatever you want to play. Just go out and get the other side of the story. It's called Journalism 101. And if the other side doesn't want to talk to you, you find the other side on record somewhere, somehow. And, maybe they don't look good because they didn't talk to you, but it doesn't matter. At least you put something in there. That's all Barry was asking for. Oh, my goodness. You'd think she'd ask for the moon and then some. So they did finally air it. It was neither here nor there. Nobody really seemed to care. But in the meantime, you're now looking at Sharon probably being out of a job and Scott Pelley being out of a job. And I'm just warning Barry that there's more where that came from. It's not going to fix it because you have systemically a problem in the institution itself. Someone actually mentioned this to the Daily Mail. They said, a source that they spoke to, I can be right on record. I'm just going to tell you, the place is a problem. And by the way, they're leaking like a sieve, right? They're talking to the media all the time. All the people in that building, they're all miserable. They hate Barry. They can't believe she makes $150 million, because of that free press little website she put together. They added that CBS News is allergic to changes. True. Especially the 60 Minutes people. True. What I tell you about the smoking in the offices, right? They lack respect for Weiss. True. This is exactly what I told you, who previously ran the anti-woke outlet, The Free Press. They don't think Barry Weiss, quote, is qualified to be their boss. True. This is exactly how they feel. They don't want a set of fresh eyes. They don't want anything. So you get the inmates running the asylum and Barry's like, what am I supposed to do? And David's like, we got to fix this because David Ellison knows that the news is changing. But I don't know is he's got the right asset to help it. You know what I would do? Honestly, if it were me, I would try and just stream everything. I'd get rid of the unions. I'd say, we're going to change this product entirely. Hey, Sharon, you get a ton of personality. We don't get to see that on 60 Minutes. Let me see it. Let it rip, baby. Let's see the real Sharon Alfonsi. Scott, you don't have a personality. So sorry, you're out. But let's find people with some pizzazz that we can actually put into a streaming platform. And that's actually, by the way, where the opportunity is. Whether or not they stay on and whether or not they've got the get up and go to go do something else like this, we shall see. As you guys well know, the only people that succeed over here are the people that, one, are transparent, two, have no affectations. I guess that's one and the same. And three, have a passion to be doing this and are willing to kind of, let it all hang out, so to speak. I think our camera went off the other day, didn't it? Right? On live air. And there you were for all of it. All the blood, sweat, and glory, as they say. Hey, make sure you're subscribed. It's really important, as you know.
Okay, that was another good one with Trisha. So I got 4 6-minute ones. I'm gonna try to get in. The 2 older ladies that do their intel. I think everybody likes them.
Activated. This is an organic American protest. This is a professional regime change tactic deployed on American soil. So why Minneapolis? Why now? Because the empire has just lost its primary weapon. In recent weeks, the foreign policy mouthpieces of the Anglo-American establishment have been clutching their pearls about the end of the post-war order. They know the game is up. Just look at Mark Carney, the new anti-Trump voice of the empire, delivering the obituary at Davos this week.
We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger.
But here's where it gets interesting. If you listen closely, the leading British and Commonwealth voices aren't just mourning the post-war order. They're suddenly obsessed with the 19th century. NPR is reporting that Trump's America First is dragging us back to a 19th century world of spheres of influence. And the Council on Foreign Relations warns we're drifting not by accident, but by structural necessity toward a world that looks far less like the liberal universalism of 1945 and more like the balance of power order of the late 19th century. Spheres of influence, managed rivalry, and transactional diplomacy. And then enter Jeremy Corbyn of the British Labour Party. He chimed in.
What we're looking at is almost 19th century imperial powers squabbling over bits and pieces from the rest of the world.
Now ask yourself, what was Britain's greatest fear in the 19th century? That the principles of the American Revolution would spread, that the economics of the American system would create strong, prosperous, sovereign nations, leaving the imperial policies of financial control, backwardness, and depopulation in the dust. Which, by the way, is exactly what Donald Trump is doing today. So how do they want to respond? Pay attention to the Anglosphere commentators. Suddenly, it's all the rage to quote Lord Palmerston. First, it was Lord Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Henry John Temple, Lord Palmerston, one of my great heroes, and I'm using one of my favorite books, the Dictionary of Quotations. He famously said, "We have no eternal allies, and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual, and those interests it is our duty to follow." This is really important because when you're looking at foreign policy, it is crucial to remember.
Then Canadian Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre referenced Palmerston in the same way as a model for the current transition.
But we must also remember that our trade and security partnership with the U.S. is centuries old and will outlast one president. To quote the British Liberal Prime Minister, Lord Palmerston, "We have no eternal allies and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual, and those interests it is our duty to follow."
And the British website Unheard lamented that the nation of Lord Palmerston is unable to secure itself a place in an emerging global order. Now, this isn't nostalgia. This is a roadmap. Lord Palmerston dominated British foreign policy from 1809 to 1865 as Secretary of War, Foreign Secretary, and Prime Minister. His mission was simple: destroy any nation or alliance that might follow in the footsteps of the United States and challenge British hegemony. And how did he do it? He didn't just use gunboats. He pioneered the use of mobs and liberation movements to destabilize rival nations from within. He sponsored anarchists, separatists, and radicals. Introduced.
Okay, that's our first one there. I got 3 more I'm going to try to get.
This isn't nostalgia. This is a roadmap. Lord Palmerston dominated British foreign policy from 1809 to 1865 as Secretary of War, Foreign Secretary, and Prime Minister. His mission was simple: destroy any nation or alliance that might follow in the footsteps of the United States and challenge British hegemony. And how did he do it? He didn't just use gunboats. He pioneered the use of mobs and liberation movements to destabilize rival nations from within. He sponsored anarchists, separatists, and radicals across Europe and America to break up sovereign states that threatened the empire. Lord Palmerston was the original author of the Color Revolution. And now, as the American system rises again under this administration, the heirs of Palmerston are dusting off his playbook. They see that the national security strategy and now the new national defense strategy have ended U.S. support for color revolutions abroad. So they're bringing the war home. If you're beginning to realize the world works a little different than you've been told, you need to subscribe to Promethean Action's free newsletter. We cover this fight from the standpoint of the real historical battle between empire and sovereign nations, the battle most people don't even know exists. So head on over to the Promethean Action website and subscribe. Now, what really forced the empire's hand? What made them activate the Palmerston playbook on American soil? Donald Trump and his team just spent a week at Davos delivering a very specific message. Globalism is a failure. Europe is irrelevant. We're not fighting your wars. The post-war order is dead, and the real America is back. Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent, and Trump himself were relentless in ripping globalism to pieces. But while the media obsessed over their rhetoric, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth quietly released the 2026 National Defense Strategy on January 23rd. And that document is the real hammer blow. For 80 years, American foreign policy was written by the British. From the Cold War to NATO to the endless wars after 1989, this was all designed to keep nations locked in permanent conflict so the imperial elite could maintain control. America was the enforcer. We were their dumb giant. The new NDS throws that out the window. Here's the key paragraph. We will defend the homeland and ensure that our interests in the Western Hemisphere are protected. We will deter China in the Indo-Pacific through strength, not confrontation. We will increase burden sharing with allies and partners around the world, and we will rebuild the U.S. defense industrial base as part of the president's once-in-a-century revival of American industry. Now, this document explicitly states that the security of the U.S. homeland and the Western Hemisphere is now our primary concern, not China, where, as you saw, the language shifted from strategic competition to strength, not confrontation. And the usual saber-rattling over Taiwan? Go on. Well, the British noticed. And even more shocking to the geopolitical establishment, Russia is now described as a persistent but manageable threat to NATO's eastern members. Did you catch that? A threat to NATO's eastern members, not necessarily to the United States. And the Washington Post got that message. What does this add up to? The revival of the Monroe Doctrine. The Western Hemisphere is now the foundation of American national defense. Not Europe, not the Pacific, but our neighborhood. And the Department of War isn't waiting around. Immediately after the NDS dropped, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane announced something unprecedented. On February 11th, he's convening military leaders from 34 Western Hemisphere nations. The mission? Take down Dope Incorporated, the narco-terrorist networks that have been a favorite weapon of the British Empire since the Opium Wars. That's why Maduro was captured. That's why Venezuela, Colombia, and other countries are being given the opportunity to free themselves from the cartels. And the February meeting will bring the rest of the hemisphere into the fight. Trump didn't just ruffle feathers at Davos. He ended 80 years of British-written American foreign policy. No more permanent great power enemies. No more regime change abroad. No more color revolutions funded by USAID. No more American blood and treasure spent enforcing the empire's rules-based order. They had no choice but to activate domestic assets. The Trump administration announced the end of the post-war order, and the empire knows it. And that's why they're suddenly channeling Lord Palmerston, the original color revolution mastermind, who spent decades trying to stop the American system from spreading. They couldn't beat us through their rules-based order, so they're reaching back 170 years for the playbook that preceded it. Which brings us back to Minneapolis. This isn't spontaneous outrage over immigration enforcement. This is a Palmerston operation, professional color revolution tactics imported from Britain 40 years ago, nurtured by globalist money, and now deployed against a sitting U.S. president. The same people who ran regime change in Ukraine and Syria are running operations in Minnesota. Rachel Sayre told you so herself. But the new NDS shows we know their game, and this time we're not playing by their rules. The British establishment wants you to think America is the new empire. In fact, Chatham House is even hosting a seminar called The New Threat of Imperial America. Think about that. The headquarters of the British imperial establishment is accusing America of being imperial for refusing to fight their wars. Now, Promethean Action is doing more than just exposing all this. We're building a movement of Lord Palmerston is unable to.
Okay, we got two good ones from her. And then her latest, I got to catch up on with her and her other partner there. We got the last two with her.
Look at this. European nations have officially deployed military personnel to Greenland. This isn't a drill. It is a direct, desperate signal to President Trump that they are willing to fight to stop his acquisition of the island. Canada's Mark Carney has pledged military support against the United States through the use of NATO's Article 5 to defend Greenland.
The future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for the Kingdom of Denmark. We are NATO partners with Denmark, and so our full partnership stands. Our obligations on Article 5, Article 2 of NATO stand, and we stand full square behind those.
But if you think this display of force will intimidate the new administration, you're making a fatal miscalculation. Because while the media paints this as a standoff, the reality is much simpler. The old order is collapsing. Today, the World Economic Forum meets in Davos, but the champagne isn't flowing like it used to. Donald Trump is arriving with the largest U.S. delegation in history, not to negotiate with the globalists, but to dictate their terms of surrender. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've spent decades tracking the globalist
This might be an
financial
old one, but I
dictatorship
got two
that
more.
has run the
I'll
West since 1971, the exact year the WEF was founded. This is not a coincidence, and what is happening in Davos right now is the end of that era. In this update, we are breaking down three things the mainstream media is terrified to tell you. First, the truth about Europe's suicide mission in Greenland. Second, how Trump's raid on Davos is dismantling the WEF from the inside. And third, and finally, the new economic institutions being built right now by Trump to replace their dying system. If this is your cup of tea, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. As you know, President Trump is negotiating with Denmark to secure Greenland as a U.S. possession. He is offering to buy it outright, but has not taken military force off the table if that is necessary to secure this vital national security goal. Beginning midweek last week, the Danes and the Brits organized European NATO members to fly into Greenland. They declared this to be a signal to the United States that significant NATO partners would be willing to militarily defend Greenland against the United States if it came to that. As usual, the major effort was a propaganda assault on Donald Trump's character. He was portrayed worldwide as a modern-day gunboat imperialist, robbing the 57,000 inhabitants of Greenland of their chosen destiny. Now, Greenland is still owned by the Danes due to the historical accident called the Danish Empire. President Trump responded to the military deployment by noting that the U.S. has subsidized the Danes and all other European countries involved for decades. Not only that, but the Danish Empire ceased to exist in 1953. We never charged these countries tariffs before. We provided military defense to them without charge. Here is more of what the president said. Quote, "This is a very dangerous situation for the safety, security, and survival of our planet. These countries who are playing this very dangerous game have put a level of risk in play that is not tenable or sustainable." He went on to announce that unless a deal is reached to secure Greenland for the United States by February 1st, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland will see a 10% tariff on their exports to the U.S., a new one. If there's no deal by July 1st, that tariff will be increased by 25%. These are, of course, the very same countries who are fighting to keep the Ukraine war going and its slaughter going, despite Trump's best efforts at peace. Let's listen to Secretary Scott's message yesterday on Greenland's strategic location and its irreplaceable role in defending the U.S. from an attack from the north.
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen, and it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. And if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
United States military planners have sought to acquire Greenland ever since the Civil War. Its strategic location is central to repelling any attack from the north. Europe's current anti-American stance underlines why the acquisition is now even more critical. They just told us they're willing to go to war with the United States to save Greenland for them. Just like our War Department at the end of World War I, any sane military planner now must assume that Canada and Greenland are potential adversaries and plan accordingly. Does Europe presently have the capability to make a serious military challenge to the United States? Well, this expose tells that story humorously and well. But we're not talking about kinetic warfare immediately. The war which has been waged on us since 1971 is hybrid warfare, a concerted effort to destroy our culture, our institutions, and foment continuous unrest of the type we are presently seeing in Minneapolis and elsewhere. Now, I have just covered something with the type of history and context you as a citizen have a right to demand from your leaders. You can get much more of this analysis by subscribing to our new.
Okay, that's the first one. I got a couple short ones from her. Tomorrow, first show will be about 3 o'clock, you guys. The first one will be 3 o'clock. Terry, yeah, I finally got the internet going. My new number on the Telegram messed me up. But yeah, we got a couple more short ones. And then tomorrow, the first one will be 3. This was yesterday.
Charlie Kirk, because it will further divide the country. The president is having none of it.
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious and they're horrible and they're politically savvy.
He knows that Charlie Kirk's assassination is only the latest round in the now 10-year seditious conspiracy against our nation. Exacting real justice for Charlie can finally end it. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I'm the co-author of the Promethean Action ebook, A Police Dossier. It's the British who murder our presidents. You can read it by going to the Promethean Action store and downloading it. The link is in the description. Today, I'm going to first do an update about what we can say we know about the assassination and warn you that the internet is full of intelligence operations aimed to confuse you or worse about what is happening. Then I'm going to talk about how Charlie Kirk is already becoming more powerful in death than in life. Finally, I'll talk about the implications of investigating George Soros criminally, which President Trump said he's going to do in his Fox and Friends interview Friday. So, London's Guardian and the American...
Okay, this will be the last one, you guys. About 3 minutes here. And tomorrow's first show will be 3.
was arrested after he was identified by a family friend from the pictures circulated by the FBI. His father turned him in. The identification and arrest was accomplished in 33 hours. Now, search warrants for his computers, his social media, his phone, and interviews of those closest to him are being executed and will tell us a lot more factually in the next 72 hours. The writings on his shell casings include well-known slogans from the terrorist group Antifa and video game memes. Antifa and a related support operation, Refuse Fascism, have been involved in violent riots against Donald Trump since Inauguration Day in 2017. As we've documented in our police dossier, British intelligence has instigated each wave of anti-Trump operations. Just as a reminder, Here's the cover of the London Spectator as an example from January of 2017. In his Fox and Friends interview, President Trump said the country will only be unified when its economic policies succeed. Here he is again.
The only thing that's going to bring us together is tremendous success.
When the nation has a mission to rebuild, to go forth as Genesis commands and multiply and subdue the earth, we become something greater than ourselves. We fulfill our identity in God's continuing creation as productive human beings. The internet is filled right now with conspiracy theories of every sort about Charlie's assassination, rage against those investigating it, and amateur speculation about the crime scene, not to mention the grotesque celebration on liberal and mainstream media news sites. Some of this comes from the reflexive belief that we are being lied to again, and there could not possibly be just one assassin. There is also a lot of foreign intelligence input there aimed to divide us. People forget that all those prior assassinations were before the internet, and before the internet became a weapon of psychological warfare. Charlie Kirk talked about this himself in a post discussing what he called an assassination culture. Over and over again, lies about Trump as Hitler are written with the knowledge and hope that it will trigger some mentally imbalanced person to act. When that mentally imbalanced assassin is identified, they're either dead by suicide or, like Ryan Roth, the Florida assassin, defending himself alone in a criminal trial. For years, intelligence mind control experiments aimed to create exactly this type of brainwashed assassin, a kind of robot who can't be named or traced to his or her creator. So what?
Okay. Well, I'm glad I got my straightened out with my number on Telegram so I can connect to it. So I've got 2 shows in today. So yeah, tomorrow's first show will be 3 o'clock. Unless something develops in the morning. Any breaking news. But the first schedule will be 3, then night show. I don't see you guys in the weekend. Everybody have a good weekend, and I wish everybody love all of our music like and sub to the backup channels in the description box, please. Thank you. And then Carol and Lucy, Kay, you get rest tonight, Kay. And stay safe, stay strong, keep the faith, never give up. Signing off, Chico do another big day of intel and see what tomorrow brings, like they say. Love you guys, we'll see you tomorrow.